Back in the day, before streaming, before CDs, we listened to music on albums. A vinyl disc spinning 33 and a third revolutions per minute brought us great music one side at a time. 20 or so minutes of music, 4 or 5 songs usually, that created a single listening experience. This format exposed us to other songs of the artist, not just the hits, and often flowed in an order that was created to build and maintain or mold a musical experience for the listener.
Sideshow brings musical experiences from the past to life today. Here, we discuss and review individual sides of record albums we have grown to appreciate and hope you will too. Welcome to The Sideshow.
All right, welcome to The Sideshow. We are going to get kicked off today by Mike. Mike, why don't you tell the audience what we're going to be talking about today?
Thanks, Mark. Today, we're going to be talking about one of my all-time favorite sides, and in my opinion, a major classic, and that is Led Zeppelin III, Side 2. The second side from Led Zeppelin's third album. Led Zeppelin was one of the dominant rock bands of the entire decade of the 1970s, in both quality of the music and popularity, in my opinion. And they started out in the late 60s. After the dissolution of the band the Yardbirds, which Jimmy Page had played in, and Jimmy Page was the driving force behind Led Zeppelin. He hooked up with another young but experienced musician named John Paul Jones, and they wanted to work together, and they ended up hooking up with two sort of a little bit younger kind of shit kickers from Birmingham, England. John Bonham, a drummer, and then Robert Plant, the vocalist. And in 1969, they put out their first two albums. Very, very heavy, kind of blues-oriented hard rock. A couple straight-out blues covers on their first album, along with a lengthy sort of plodding jam, Dazed and Confused. There were some acoustic songs, but I wouldn't call them. They were more like songs where they used acoustic guitar, than genuine acoustic songs. They became popular very quickly. The rock concert going public liked them, and they put out their second album. Both first and second album in 1969. Led Zeppelin II, it was called. Had a Whole Lot of Love. Heartbreaker, the Lemon Song, just heavy stuff.
Yep.
And by the time Led Zeppelin III came along, there were some, not necessarily most of the people that really liked Led Zeppelin, but there were some who were sort of like, how much of this just getting your brain pummeled with a meat tenderizer, are we going to be able to take as time goes on from these guys? And the first side of Led Zeppelin III, it had the Immigrant Song, Celebration Day. The Since I've Been Loving You was a kind of a longer. It was a little more sophisticated, but basically a blues song with Led Zeppelin type guitar in it. And so on side one, it was kind of what you'd expect from the band, having listened to the first two.
Well, I guess, to your point, it's like people are starting to question, can these guys do anything else besides this real, heavy riff types, which I mean, Jimmy Page was great at, but the notion of, is this what it's just going to be? And I think that as those types of songs were really becoming incredibly popular, and their music was becoming people lost a little bit of a track of just how experienced Jimmy Page and John Paul Jones were. They had done a lot of studio work prior to them them becoming the band. I didn't realize at the time, but I mean, Jimmy Page and John Paul Jones played on the song Goldfinger. I mean, like the theme to the James Bond movie Goldfinger. I mean, they were in the studio. They were respected studio musicians, experienced studio musicians, and you pointed out they were kind of the older, more mature folks. And Jimmy Page clearly had something different that he wanted to do, but that didn't mean that he wasn't very skilled in a number of different types and styles of music, including classic music. So just pretty experienced and talented group of people that arrived as by the time we get to this third album.
Well, and I mean, Jimmy Page played in the studio like on some early Who recordings. He played the guitar solo in Donovan's Hurdy Gurdy Man, which was a kind of an early sort of heavy guitar solo. John Paul Jones like arranged some songs for the Rolling Stones, like she's a rainbow, and for example, and so they really were they were young guys when they did these things, but they'd been around in the music industry, no question, and and despite the question being asked, is this all they can do? Because I mean, this sort of riff heavy, hard guitar, heavy metal type stuff, they more or less continued that throughout their career to some extent. But with side 2 of Led Zeppelin III, they introduced something that was both appealing to their fans, but also very different from what had been, for the most part, their stock and trade up to that point. And there was genuine acoustic music on this side for the most, and most of it was, and a term that became much more popular later, unplugged. Yeah, where it wasn't just that you got an acoustic guitar in the music. It was more like some country or bluegrass music, or older folk music, or acoustic blues music. It was something that was different than anything they had done up to this point, and it went over well with their audience. And I think it also caused people who sort of never really approved of the idea of Led Zeppelin to begin with to take note and to say, here's there's more to these guys than has previously met the eye.
Yep.
And it's 5 what I think are all let me put it this way. It's 5 songs that are all good songs, some of them among Led Zeppelin's very best songs. And so it stands as a side, along with you could argue that both sides of all Led Zeppelin's albums are worthwhile. But this is one of the better ones for a very substantial band that had a big impact during the 70s. Led Zeppelin III came out in 1970, and would ultimately be followed by Led Zeppelin IV, which most people, not all, but most people would agree is not only Led Zeppelin's finest albums, but I mean one of the greatest albums to ever come out. And they sort of set the table. They sort of set the table for that album with Led Zeppelin III, and in particular, in my opinion, side 2. Now, I don't actually have a copy of the album to show.
But I do.
Before Mark kind of does the little spiel there, about 30 years ago, a friend of mine, might have been 40 years ago, let's say 35, a friend was reading a book about Led Zeppelin and wanted to get in the spirit, and I loaned him all my Led Zeppelin albums, and just never got them back. And then next thing you know, CDs came around, and I've got it on compact disc. But Mark, it's one of the more interesting album covers that they ever put out.
Yeah, it's a gatefold album. It's a single album, but it's a gatefold album. Kind of interesting art in between. a picture of the band on the back. And interestingly enough, they've added something for people to play with. There is a moving disc inside of the album that you can move around, and again, activities for maybe stoned high school boys as they were listening and enjoying this music. So interesting album. You've got some weight in your hands when you're checking this out while you're listening to the music.
Well, no, and that's something that is hard to go back to. But I mean, you'd go to the record store, you'd buy the record, you'd come home, you'd take that shrink wrap off of it, take the dust sleeve out, put the album on, and then to sit down to listen to it, you'd usually take the album cover over there, and sometimes it had the lyrics on there, or it had other information, or whatnot, and it's just not the same with a compact disc. And it's certainly not the same when you're listening to something on a streaming service or an iPad or whatever it might be, or off your smartphone.
And it is important to note as you open this up, again, you've just put this on, you're checking this out. There is something written on here that I think is a message they wanted to give to the fans. I'll read it real quick and then back to you, Mike, for some of the actual music. But it says, "Credit must be given to Bron-Y-Aur, a small derelict cottage in South Snowdonia, for painting a somewhat forgotten picture of true completeness, which acted as an incentive to some of these musical statements." So it's this physical place, a cottage. We're going to hear a little bit about it a little later on, but just kind of an acknowledgement to what brought them to some of this music that was on the album.
Well, and that if you take the time to read about Led Zeppelin, I mean, that was this cottage called, I believe the pronunciation is Bron-Y-Aur. Bron-Y-Aur. I believe is the pronunciation, but yes, something like that. But it's in Wales, and it's kind of this rustic cottage out in this sort of misty mountain Welsh forest type area where they'd go hang out and spend time and let the muse help them create music. So I mean, that's a good thing to have pointed out. And one of the songs on this side is actually makes specific reference to it. But the first song on the side is called Gallow's Pole, and it comes from that's an old folk song originally, and I don't know how far back it goes, but it was a song that Leadbelly used to perform back in the 30s. And it may have been a song that was discovered when a man named Alan Lomax, who went around the South recording music played by, authentic players down there. And he was at, I believe, it was the Angola prison in Louisiana, and where Leadbelly, whose real name I believe was Huddy Ledbetter, his nickname was, and sort of more popular name was Leadbelly, but he was in prison, and but he could play guitar and sing songs, and he, the original Midnight Special, CCR, that's a Leadbelly song, and Goodnight Irene, Leadbelly, blah blah blah. But and I believe in Leadbelly's version it was called Gallus Pole. It was Gallis for the way he pronounced it. But in any case, this is Gallows Pole, and the song is being sung by someone who's about to be hung. He's on the gallows and he's about to be hung, and he's asking the hangman to hold on. And the as far as the music of the song, it starts out with just an acoustic guitar, and the hangman, can you hang on a little while? But eventually it kind of speeds up a little bit, and then you have some other instruments that come in. There's a mandolin in there. Eventually a banjo comes in. I mean, a number of different acoustic instruments. And then you get some drums and bass, but the drumming is it's not typical John Bonham, drumming. It's kind of it's restrained, and the bass is not loud. So it's an acoustic song, and so it's not necessarily authentic folk or blues or bluegrass, but it certainly has that feel of any one of those different types of music. And the singer who's about to be hung wants the hangman to hold on because his friends are coming, and he says, "I see my brother coming, and brother, could you get me some silver and bring it so you can keep me from the gallows pole?" So he's asking his brother to come and basically pay off the hangman so that he doesn't go through with his job. And then he goes on to, "Hangman, hold on, my sister's coming. She's been riding many a mile. And sister, I implore you, take him by the hand, take him to some shady bower, save me from the wrath of this man." So he's asking his brother to come and pay money, and he's asking his sister
Cash will do. Cash will do.
Cash will do. And he's asking his sister to come and provide other forms of favor to the hangman, to get him off the hook. And
you don't have cash.
And apparently the hangman is willing to take the brother's money and to also take what the sister is offering, but then, no pun intended, welches and hangs the guy anyway. And so it's not necessarily a happy song, but it's not a downcast song. It's sort of a guy who's trying to do what he can when he's about to get hung, and it doesn't work out, and he's going to get hung anyway. But what you going to do?
That's life. I like this song when you put on the side of this album, and you can just picture the physical act of putting a record on the turntable. I mean, you read the first, the name of the first song. I enjoy when I'm listening to a side. I'd rather not even know the songs that are on it. I just like to listen to the side. But it's hard not to see the name of at least the first song as you're positioning the record over the center of the turntable and putting it on. So you see this gallows pole. So you already have a vision in your head of a gallows, right? And the way though the song starts with that strumming of the acoustic guitar, it's done in a way, and I also think that there's a little tiny, at the end of each strum, there's a little pluck of like a mandolin that goes in there. It just adds kind of a tension to it. So it's not like a calming strum. There's this little mandolin pluck that adds some tension. And you can really, you've got this word gallows in your head. You're listening to this, and you can really just picture like the sun coming up over the mountains or over the trees in the morning, and seeing this noose just kind of slowly moving back and forth as the sky moves from dark blue to orange and the sun is coming up, and today's the day the hangman is coming for you. You can really just picture it as this song is coming in. And to your point, it picks up a little bit, almost, I don't know, I get the notion of like I'm walking into a saloon, almost the way the song gets, maybe where some of this bartering is happening for some silver or some, some ass from the sister, whatever it happens to be. But, the song proceeds. Really neat kind of song. The whole notion is kind of a downer, but not a downer to listen to.
And when you talk about the beginning guitar strumming of the song before it picks up, a word that's often used to describe the manner in which Led Zeppelin, puts their music together is texture. Mm-hmm. And the instruments coming in these different acoustic instruments I mentioned and whatnot that come in, it does so in a way that adds genuine texture that gives that sort of I don't know what you'd call it. I mean, I think when Leadbelly was singing this song, I mean, he was singing about people getting lynched.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
but the in the American South, whereas when Led Zeppelin does it, they're thinking more, after having spent time in rural Wales and sort of pondering life, the universe, and everything. I mean, it's more like a medieval
Yeah. Yeah.
castles, and you go in the castle, and there's the and there's back in medieval times in England and whatnot. The castle was sort of like a little town, and there were people that could get in the castle and have little hovels to live in, and then there was a more centralized spot that was not open to everyone, where
Yeah.
the lord and master was. And you'd have towns and castles that would have these trading barter places, and people would come into, they'd need to buy some fabric, or they'd need to buy some potatoes, and there'd be prostitutes kind of around, and this and
Yeah.
that, and it kind of does kind of capture that kind of flea market, sort of feel in that
Yeah.
context, because it is kind of chirpy, happy.
Yeah.
It's a toe tapper, and like you go into a tavern, and get a wooden mug of ale, or whatever it was. It really does kind of capture that feel fairly well. And then at the end, just I'm swinging from the gallows pole, swinging on the gallows pole, swinging on the gallows pole. And then at the end, I gotta swing, I gotta swing. Um, uh, your phone going off there, Mark?
Yeah. I got it. It's good.
Um, so gallows pole, it's a good one, a good opener to the side. Uh, the second side, or excuse me, second song on side two is a song called Tangerine.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's one of the few Led Zeppelin songs that is credited to Jimmy Page only. A lot of them are Page Plant, and some, are John Paul Jones or John Bonham or whatever. But in any case, this song is attributed to Jimmy Page alone. And this song is got more conventional rock instrumentation. There's an acoustic guitar is how it opens, and it's definitely not the loud, Hammer of the Gods type Led Zeppelin sound. But it's got more of a rock song, a ballad, true, but more of a rock sound to it. The lyrics are very simple. I mean, Tangerine is a song, or a person, a woman that Jimmy Page recalls. They apparently loved each other, but it seems like 1,000 years ago. Does she still remember times like these? Because I do.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that Tangerine does is there's an electric guitar solo, which there just isn't on the rest of this side. There just
Yeah.
isn't. And at least one rock critic described this song as being kind of the musical basis for Stairway to Heaven. And that this was sort of kind of set some of the basic pieces that ultimately came to much more substantial fruition
Mm-hmm.
on the next album, in Stairway to Heaven, by this song. I think it's a very good song. It's a nice song, but I think it's arguably the least substantial song on this side of the album, and certainly not among Led Zeppelin's classics. But it fits in well with this side, where they were trying to just sort of step back a little bit. Just a very simple, pleasant, pop friendly, radio friendly song.
Yeah. Well, and also it's a sad song. it is again thinking back to this, this lost love, whatever you want to call it, and clearly still, you know, um, um, thinks about it a lot. And this is a song you talked about. Well, it might not be the most substantial, but I would not be surprised if, especially from back in the record days, that it was actually the most played song. This is the type of song that you play over and over and over again when you've just lost a girlfriend that you are not happy about the fact that you lost her, right? This is the type of song where in high school we learned how to actually place a needle right in between the break of songs, because you're laying on your bed listening to this song, and as soon as the song's over, you turn up, you go to the thing, and you move it back to the beginning of the song to play this song again, and you do that over and over and over again. And this was one of those songs where, after a rough breakup, I mean, this is how you got through it. Is listening to a song like this over and over and over again, and that's just, to me, that's the type of song that this is. It is, to your point, it's not it's not. The song itself isn't, overly slow or mellow or particularly rocking. It's got a little of both. But I mean, it is a song. I mean, that's it can serve a purpose in those times of need.
And I mean, that is a good, because it is a very melancholy song.
Yeah.
It's sort of, it's there, and there's regret that's there.
Yeah.
But it's not an unpleasant sounding song.
No,
It's sort of
no.
sort of commiserating with yourself.
Yes.
Type of song, and I don't mean to to sort of downplay the value of the song, because I mean, on this side of an album, or just in the context of Led Zeppelin in general, I mean, that's a pretty high standard. And and it holds its own, on this side and in the entire catalog of Led Zeppelin.
And it also is, I think, it's a showcase of how important the interplay between Jimmy Page, his ability to write songs and obviously play the guitar, in fact, many different types of guitar, and layer that texture of the guitar, but the strength of Robert Plant's vocals, and I don't necessarily mean with like powerful screaming vocals, really high quality vocals, both in the previous song in Gallow's Pull. I mean, you're starting out again with this soft kind of music, but it's those vocals that really bring the like begging of the hangman in the next song, and in this one, the way he's just like Tangerine, the way that he pulls that you can feel this longing and this of this time. You can feel the emotion in his voice, and he really did sing with emotion. And that combination, I think, was really critical to Led Zeppelin's success. Yes, there was some heavy, just great classic guitar riffs and guitar and quick moving, but without that emotion in Robert Plant's voice, which is one of the things that you hear in this particular song, it wouldn't have been the powerful music that it was.
And I agree with that, and it's worth going back to Gallow's poll in terms of just generally characterizing Robert Plant's vocals. Is, here we've got the situation where the guy's about to be hung, and he's able to sort of capture this sort of happy-go-lucky almost attitude, like, come on, my brother's coming, he's got some money for you. My sister's coming. She's got something else for you. Come on, what do you say? It's like, well, thanks, but no, I'm going to hang you anyway. Well, can't win for trying.
I would agree, and that's really kind of the notion of, and we hear that too in a number of the other songs that we're going to hear on this album, and obviously in other Led Zeppelin works. So it's always something that I think about as I'm listening to Led Zeppelin.
And having kind of talked about Robert Plant's vocals specifically, moving into the next song, the third song on the side, which is called "That's the Way," and this song, and the next song as well, are just two of my absolute favorite Led Zeppelin songs, and this one in particular. The music, it's a very simple, very airy sounding acoustic guitar with mandolin in the background, and to whatever extent there's percussion, it's very restrained, and it's got a very light, uplifting feel to it, but also kind of contemplative and wistful. It's the sort of music you could imagine playing if it's a nice summer day, not too hot, you're in a pastoral setting, in a meadow, with breeze blowing, and just sort of able to sit back and relax and enjoy the setting.
Yeah.
So it's got a very pleasant, very, very benign feel to it. Pleasurable.
This is a great side of an album because of songs like this, and this one in particular. I'd agree with you. I mean, when I'm sitting out on the lake, and it's a nice day, there's a little breeze blowing. This is perfect music to have on in the background, right? To be listening to while you're taking something nice in. It's pleasurable to listen to. And I mean, we've talked about some songs that have some darker, maybe, meaning to them, or sad songs for a broken heart. That's not the point. The type of music is just perfect for that type of setting. It's pleasurable to listen to, and it's a great part of this particular whole side.
And I think that this is some of the best lyrics that Led Zeppelin ever came up with, because despite the very positive, relaxed, no trouble feel that the music is putting out, the lyrics are not quite as clear cut as all that, and there's just the right amount of ambiguity in the lyrics to make it a great song. And the first verse of the song starts out with Robert playing is, "I don't know how I'm going to tell you. I can't play with you no more. I don't know how I'm going to do what Mama told me. My friend, the boy next door." Basically, I mean, it's Robert's mother has said, you can't play with them anymore.
Yeah.
And it's not made clear in the first, so far why that is. But the singer goes on, "I can't believe what people saying. You're going to let your hair hang down." Now, let your hair hang down. What does that mean? The boy next door has long hair. He's got one of those long-haired hippie types or something.
Mm-hmm.
But then he goes, "I'm satisfied to sit here working all day long. You're in the darker side of town." Now, that alludes to potential racial issues. But I mean, the bottom line is Mama has said, no, don't hang out with them. Then the third.
It's also clear that it's not someone that it's like, well, I didn't really like them anyway. Yeah. I mean, this is, he does, I don't know how I'm going to tell, I don't know how I'm going to do this. He does not want to stop hanging out with this friend. I mean, this is really kind of this song starts out, if you listen to those lyrics, and the music doesn't reflect this, I agree with you, but these words themselves, it's just brutal. Very sad when you think about the notion of a child having to go to a friend and say, I can't hang out with you anymore.
But if you don't pay close attention to the lyrics, if you're just if you're sitting in whatever setting it might be, and you've got this song playing in the background, whether it's you're out by the lake, you're out in the meadow, you're sitting on the deck behind the house, you just it's a warm summer afternoon, you've taken care of your chores, and you're gonna just sit and get a sniff of air, and you don't listen carefully to the lyrics, there's a pleasant sound to it.
Yeah.
It's not an unpleasant sound. But the third verse, and when I'm out, I see you walking. Why don't your eyes see me? Or could it be you found another game to play? What did Mama say to me? Now, does that suggest that the separation, the fact that there's some, whether it's whatever it is about this other person, that Mama doesn't want Robert hanging out with them, is are you find another game to play? It suggests that that there's some failure of communication or whatever. I don't know, but the whole concept of the title of the song is "That's the Way," and then the chorus of the song comes right after those lyrics. What did Mama say to me? And what Mama said to him was, "That's the way. Oh, that's the way it ought to be. Mama said that's the way it ought to stay." And it's hard not to interpret those lyrics as saying, the reasons why you shouldn't be hanging out with them, the other, whatever that is, the person on the other side of the tracks, or the person that's not like you, or the whatever it is. I mean, there's certainly a lot of division in the United States nowadays, a lot of it breaking down on political lines, a lot of, class, and whatnot. And there's still racial issues in the United States as well. And whatever it is, what Mama is saying, that's the way it ought to be, and that's the way it ought to stay. And that's not a particularly uplifting message. That the singer's mother is that's the position that she's taking. And I don't know that. I mean, I don't. And again, if you choose to just sort of let the music wash over you, that there's any negativity or unpleasantness really doesn't take hold. But and because when you hear him say that's the way it ought to be, it's when you listen to him singing, it sounds like he's referring to the way things should be.
Yeah.
Like he's lamenting the problem and offering a solution and saying that that's the way it ought to be. But I guess I don't see any solution being offered in the lyrics.
No, and I do think that when I hear the song, mainly because of what you've been talking about, is this song does not have, when you're listening to the song, set the lyrics aside, when you're listening to the song, you're not hearing a darkness, sadness, or this is something that should bum you out, right? And as I listen to the song, it's hard to push back the words, and it's clearly in the song, that's the way it should be. That some of these things are happening, because there's another part where he's almost trying to comfort a friend who's looking at the dirty water and the fish are dying, and it's almost like, look, that's the way it is. And it's like your life can be a little freer if you don't bring yourself down with things are just the way that they are, right? Kind of let's not lose yourself. Let's not fill yourself with sorrow for things that you cannot control. Kind of in a serenity prayer kind of way, right? It's like, look, let's understand the things that we can't control, and let's let those go, and let's focus on the things that we can do. Which, in a world where there's a lot of bad things that are going on, a lot of negative things that are around you, that is pretty sound advice that a mom could give, could give their son. It's like, look, focus on the things that you can control and make those the best that you can. And even though you're hearing some other messaging in it, that's certainly what I take from the song. And it's like, look, that's the way that is. That's the way that it is. And, you can spend all day looking at that water and the fish and crying about it, or you can understand that's the way that it is, and let's let's go do something else that maybe can help something else or do something else. So really big, kind of a conflict between the lyrics and the way that the song comes at you.
Well, I think I used this word earlier, but I think that what you've just said kind of ties into it, but that there's ambiguity in the song. I mean, there's obviously, if you take any time to pay close attention to the lyrics, there's an issue. There's something that separates people, and is there a way to remove that barrier? And in the second set of verses after the first chorus, the singer is pointing out that, to the other person, you're kind of letting the negativity draw you in.
Yeah.
And that's not the way it should be. And so that just this sort of ambiguity that where, it's not made clear is a positive aspect of the lyric writing in this song. And the way that Plant sings it, you don't feel, it doesn't drag you down. It doesn't make you feel bad. It makes you ponder. It makes you contemplate. It's a wistful song.
Yep.
And I think it's a beautiful song. It's anyone who just listens to it and says like, this is blah, blah, blah. I can't, it doesn't compute to me.
Yeah.
It's just a wonderful song. And the, at the end, as the song sort of, starts to get to the end of the song and fades out, the guitar pattern changes. And, there is a live version, of this song and the next song, both one right after each other, on the Led Zeppelin DVD, which came out, it's getting to be 20 years ago, or so. But recorded in London at Earl's Court in 1975. But during the kind of the closing guitar pattern, Plant sings, "It ain't right. It ain't right." So there is actually some commentary on what he's talking about. It ain't right. But you don't have that here. And in some ways it is better left out for some of the reasons that we're talking about. But I mean, he kind of put his cards on the table at that point. And I guess anybody who likes the idea of this sort of acoustic Zeppelin that we're talking about here owes it to themselves to check out. They do acoustic versions where the band members all sit down and play of Going to California from Led Zeppelin IV, That's the Way, and then the next song, the fourth song on side 2 of Led Zeppelin III, called Bron-Y-Aur Stomp. And this is another of just my favorite Led Zeppelin song. I mean, this is a song where if you can't tap your feet and get a smile on your face listening to Bron-Y-Aur Stomp, I don't know what to say. Acoustic, it's well titled. It's talking about Robert Plant is spending time up at the cottage in the Welsh forest, and there's this acoustic guitar starts playing, and it turns into kind of a stomper.
Yeah,
it's a stomp. That's what it is. And there's upright bass in this song, and actually drumming. I mean, there's more like John Bonham style drumming in this song, but it's definitely an acoustic performance.
Yeah.
And it's basically Robert Plant is singing, caught you smiling at me, that's the way it should be, like a leaf is to a tree, so fine. Yeah, all the good times we had. I sang love songs so glad, always smiling, never sad, so fine. I mean, no ambiguity there.
Yeah,
it's like my toes are tapping, my fingers are snapping, I got a smile on my face, and I'm in a good place.
You really can picture, like, like a bunch of old guys that have been coming to like a pub with their instruments for years, right? And they show up, and they all kind of get together. They pull their chairs around, and one person starts playing with the guitar, and they all start stomping their feet, and then the next one join, and it's like they're just having fun, like like they do. And stomp is a very appropriate name for the sense that you get for this. I mean, you can picture these guys literally stomping on the ground while they're playing, and people sitting and listening, and stomping their feet and clapping their hands while it's happening. I mean, it really has a sense of like a community creation of music.
Well, and just that feel that you described, like a bunch of people that come together on a regular basis, bring their instruments and just play.
Yeah.
And one example of that could be, at the inn in an Irish town,
Yeah.
where you've got more, Celtic instruments.
Yeah.
Or it could be at, the back porch of a general store in a smaller town in West Virginia, where it's more of a, kind of a American bluegrass sort of feel to it. But the similarities are kind of melded together into the sort of feel that this song provides.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to the there's the verse chorus kind of thing. It says, "As we walk down the country lane, I be singing a song. You hear me calling your name. Hear the wind within the trees telling Mother Nature about you and me." Nothing more significant than just we're out in the country and enjoying the fresh air, the breeze through the trees, and each other's company.
Mm-hmm.
And the lyrics, basically, I don't need to go through all the lyrics of the rest of the song, because it's basically just repeating that theme. Now, there is one part, kind of like a bridge, like a set of lyrics where Robert Plant goes, "My, la-di-la, come on now, it ain't too far. Tell your friends all around the world, ain't no companion like a blue-eyed merle." Mm-hmm. Where there he sort of puts the cards on the table. The who he's singing to is his dog.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Martha, my dear. He was singing about his dog.
Yeah.
And when before I figured out what a merle was, I imagined that this was a song that a man was singing to a woman.
Yeah.
When I was younger and was listening to this, but there's no reason that you can't look at the song that way. But he's like, "Hey, you want some simple pleasure? Just go out to the cottage in the forest, take your dog out for a walk. Get
yourself a dog." Yeah.
If you want a friend, get a dog.
Yeah.
And it's not a cynical song. It's not a jaundiced take on humanity. It's just a joyous declaration of the pleasure that he gets from putting a leash on the dog, heading out, and or without a leash, out in the country. They don't necessarily have to, just going out, and it's just such an upbeat, invigorating song.
Yeah.
That fits in with the acoustic flavor of this side, and just it makes you feel good.
Yeah.
Which is one of the things, despite the more deeper potential significance of the lyrics in That's the Way, these two songs, just if you're out in the fresh air, away from the city, and taking in the pastoral, bucolic splendor of nature, these two songs really hit the spot.
Yeah.
For me.
Another great one for sitting by the lake. Again, these are walks through the woods and whatever, but I mean, it enhances the afternoon.
Yeah. So it's and either of these two songs, in my opinion, would appeal to a very broad spectrum of different types of people with different types of musical taste. Someone that didn't necessarily care for Led Zeppelin in general might like these songs. Someone that was into country music or bluegrass music and didn't care for guitar rock might like these songs. When we were in high school, if our grandparents were visiting and these songs were playing, I wouldn't have felt like I had to go turn them down.
Yeah.
Just very appealing music with some depth of meaning, and well performed. I don't think that the lyrical, the sort of different tones we've talked about, I don't think are significant on this song. It's just sort of it's a stomp.
Yeah,
it's a stomp. Well, in any case, that brings us to the last song on side 2, which is called "Hats Off to Harper," and in parentheses it says Roy Harper. So hats off to Roy Harper. And Roy Harper was a figure in England, like during the late 60s and 70s, who a lot of famous English musicians were associated with, although Roy Harper himself never became tremendously popular. But I mean, he was, he hung out with Pink Floyd. He hung out with Jimmy Page, and just others in that scene. And I don't know why they chose him to reference in this song, but that's "Hats Off to Harper." Roy Harper is the title of the song. Now, this song, kind of like Gallow's Pole, is taken from an old blues song. And the song that it's taken from is called "Shake 'Em On Down" by a genuine, authentic Mississippi blues artist named Bukka White. Bukka White, Bukka, and he was recording in I believe the 1930s, and he played a metal, like a National steel guitar, and it had that. And when you listen to this, this Led Zeppelin song, "Hats Off to Harper," it's got a fairly, I don't know, maybe harsh is a little too strong, but it's got an unvarnished slide guitar sound to it, and there's some, almost, you could almost call them psychedelic effects to the recording of both the guitar and particularly Robert Plant's vocals. And the lyrics are changed a little bit. The original blues song by Bukka White, and this was recorded like either right before or right after he went into Parchman Prison, which was a prison in the state of Mississippi that was fairly infamous in blues lore. But and it's not really clear what Bukka was talking about when he was saying "Got to shake 'em on down." His verses, he goes through a bunch of different things, and "Wake up, mama," looks like I'm going to have to shake 'em on down, and bend down to Georgia, and the jelly roll down there is good, but I think I'm going to have to shake 'em on down. And it's not necessarily very, very, very clear what he's talking about.
I get the sense in that, and I've seen that, you go to YouTube or whatever and see that and listen to the song. I always took from that it's like nothing in life is easy, right? I can't just get my neighbor to go and give me the lawnmower back that he borrowed from me. I got to go shake him on top. It's like everything I do, every person I deal with, I can't just make it happen. I've always got to work the system. I've always got to, you slap them around. I've always got to shake them on down or whatever. I kind of get the sense that it's just like, yeah, if people would just do what they're supposed to do, life would be easier, right? And everything I do, I end up having to shake them on down. And of course, not only was life hard for him then, but to your point, a couple months later, after he recorded the song, he found himself in the Mississippi State Pen. So Bucka was, nothing was easy for Bucka.
Well, and the lyrics are changed for purposes of this song. But
yes.
One of the, where, Robert Plant sings, I ain't no monkey. I can't climb no tree. No brown-skinned woman's going to make no monkey out of me. Mm-hmm. And then he kind of repeats that, I ain't no monkey. Sure can't climb no tree. And then it says, I've been mistreated, babe. I believe I'll shake 'em on down. And, you hear that and I think, well, the monkey is the guy that climbed up the tree into his wife's bedroom.
Yeah.
For adulterous purposes. And he catches him and he grabs the tree and is I'm going to shake him on down.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think that's what Bucka White was talking about.
Yeah.
But when, monkey in a tree, I think I'm going to have to shake him on down.
Yeah.
Is that's how he's going to put a stop to what's going on.
Yeah.
Whereas Bucka might have been claiming, Jesus, anytime I need something, I need some money, I need some food, I need this or that, I got to shake him on down.
Mm-hmm.
And whereas here, I think it's more of a direct response to
we've got a specific situation in mind,
and the shake him on down is basically taking care of this problem with his woman messing around on him. But it's Jimmy Page had he had an ability to play like these older, Mississippi Delta blues musicians than a lot of the other guitar players that were playing, when he was playing. I mean, whether you're talking about Jeff Beck, Eric Clapton, or even Jimi Hendrix. Mm-hmm. I mean, there were ways that that Page could play, particularly if he used an acoustic guitar, where he could just sound more like an authentic Delta bluesman than any of those other guys. And there's a live album by a blues musician who's actually he's a much more he's a white guy who's probably relatively close in age to Jimmy Page, named John Hammond, who is the son of the John Hammond that discovered Bob Dylan and Bruce Springsteen and whatnot. And he played very faithful blues music. And he has a live album where he's playing acoustic guitar, and this was recorded in the late 70s, in that neck of the woods. And I was listening to it, and this is years ago, but I was listening to it, and there was a part where he's playing, and this is a very studied, almost pedantic blues purist. So, I mean, he was looking to play like the original blues musicians played. And there was a part where he's playing like Drop Down Mama on an acoustic guitar, and I'm listening to it thinking, this sounds like Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
And this guy wasn't being influenced by Led Zeppelin. He was being influenced by blues players. And so Jimmy Page did a good job, I think, in recreating on occasion playing that really sounded like authentic acoustic Delta blues.
Well, and it's very clear the type of music that influenced Jimmy Page, because and he potentially, the first time he picked up a guitar, this was the type of music that he was trying to learn to play, which as to your point, he became very successful at. Now, I mean, just full disclosure, I mean, another reason that you can sound a lot like some of these earlier blues players is to take their music and just play it, right? And again, I love Led Zeppelin and love their songs. They lifted a few songs from these people. In fact, on this album, this was credited as a traditional arrangement. And in later years, if you look at later CDs and that type of thing. They properly credited it, and there's some settlement money that was paid to, and not just for this song either. There's a few other songs in the early Led Zeppelin repertoire that were borrowed from some of these early blues musicians. So that has been worked out, and these estates have been taken care of, and that type of thing. But all that said, that doesn't change the fact that, I mean, this is the influence that was clearly a part of Jimmy Page's upbringing, and he was also able to replicate it. And I believe, to your point, like no other of the great guitar players out there really could do.
Yeah, and I think that definitely shows in this song. Not the strongest song on the side, but it just exemplifies something about Led Zeppelin. I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, that there's a phrase that I sometimes throw about is, I'm a would-be writer, and I sometimes self-interestedly quip, immature artists imitate, mature artists steal.
Yeah.
And there's it's probably, the world is a better place because Led Zeppelin eventually kind of acknowledged that.
Yes.
But
it doesn't, and even that you talk about, well, this might not have been the strongest song on the side, but again, looking at the side, that experience of listening to this side of music, this was a good kind of trail off, a really appropriate end to this side. As you brought up in the very beginning, this isn't the heavy pounding, driving, riff driven type Led Zeppelin music that so many people think of when you're going to when you're going to list your most notable Led Zeppelin songs. This was a different type of side that was, I think, very intentionally put together to keep this type of music to flow. And this is just a natural, it feels very good to trail off this side with this particular song. It works real well.
I agree. And as far as a side is concerned, you're just regarding Led Zeppelin in general. I mean, there's, it's not outside the realm of possibility that at this point in life, I may never sit down in front of the stereo and put on Dazed and Confused or Whole Lot of Love. I'm sure I'm going to hear them at some point or whatnot. But I mean, the idea like, boy, I'm in the mood for a little Dazed and Confused.
Yeah.
Or I'm in the mood for a little Whole Lot of Love. I mean, it's probably not going to happen very often where I'm in that kind of mood, if ever. But with that said, I think for anybody who's into music at whatever age or whatever phase of things, Led Zeppelin III Side 2, you will like.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I was listening to this side recently, that's exactly what I thought. It is, look, there was a time when I wanted to rock and roll all night and party every day. And Led Zeppelin was there to deliver on that. And then as you begin to move through the rest of your life, I don't necessarily want or need to rock and roll all night and party every day. And this is the type, it's like there's music that brought you to Led Zeppelin, and this is the type of music that keeps them relevant, on times when we don't necessarily want to bang our head and we want to sit on the lake and relax. And this side just nailed it.
It did. And they managed over the balance of their career after this album to mix this type of stuff in with their other heavier material. And this is the album where they really set the table for the rest of their career, and one of my absolute favorite sides.
Well, great side, Mike. Great pick, and great conversation.
Definitely. And we will do so again next time.